The Promenade of Brooklyn Heights, one of the great destination sites of New York. This is the story of how its fabulous views were almost lost, and how it came into being in the first place, with the help of an aroused community, and very probably the machinations of the great highway builder Robert Moses. I'm Martin Schneider, and I want to introduce Henrik Krogius, longtime journalist and resident of Brooklyn Heights, who was personally involved at the time of its creation, and has written a book about the intricate tale of the Promenade.
Robert Moses, the master builder, was building highways and structures of all kinds, almost without any opposition. In 1939, the new city planning department sent a guy out to survey a possible road linking Brooklyn and Queens. His name was Fred Tumler, and he mapped a road that ran very close to the shoreline, close to all the industrial work that was then along the shore in Brooklyn and Queens. And he also steered that road across Furman Street, which is below the escarpment of Brooklyn Heights, so that it would not interfere with Brooklyn Heights. But then Moses came along a year or so later and had his own idea. His original plan was to run the highway right through Brooklyn Heights and to curve and to then start its inland move from Brooklyn Heights. And this got the Brooklyn Heights Association very much alarmed, and they had more clout than anybody south of Brooklyn Heights had. They had lawyers, they had bankers, they had politicians, and they worked to get that road changed.
All these wonderful homes having been built on the bluffs.
Yeah.
What did they have at stake in terms of how the I understand how the Heights Association would have objected to a highway running right through the heart of the neighborhood.
Right.
But then the alternative was to run it around along you mentioned Tumler's plan.
Right.
But the people living on Columbia Heights, whose backyards face this great view, what was it that they had at stake?
Well, they had these back gardens that were built on top of warehouses that were on the east side of Furman Street. And they had, of course, fantastic views from there.
One garden owner's ideal solution was presented to Robert Moses himself.
If a highway went there, that it could be on more than one level, and that it would have a cover on top, and on that cover he could get his garden put back.
His garden?
His garden.
Yes.
And this idea had strong support in the Brooklyn Heights Association, because Roy Richardson, who was the president of the Heights Association, also had a house on the Columbia Heights and faced the same situation.
In 1943, the final plans took shape, showing the 3 levels, including the promenade on the top. And in a couple of years, the expressway's big ditch was carving its way towards Brooklyn Heights.
But then as the highway turned at the north to go into the Brooklyn Bridge, they did have to destroy a number of buildings. That included the house where Washington Roebling oversaw the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, and the writer's house where W.H. Auden and Carson McCullers and Gypsy Rose Lee and others lived for a time.
This great view of Manhattan and the Lower Bay, the Statue of Liberty, I think of it actually as America's front porch.
Okay.
How is it that that's been preserved in spite of everything?
Well, actually, to begin with, there was no protection. there were still, they had to tear down the warehouses on one side of Furman Street so they could build the cantilever structure on top of it. But on the other side, there were still warehouses in place. And the Port Authority of New York, which owned those warehouses, wanted to be free to replace them with hired warehouses if necessary. The Promenade is 50 feet above Furman Street, and the Port Authority wanted the right to build them as high as 70 feet. You can believe this created an uproar in the Heights. In fact, I think it's the first time there was a concerted community reaction that went beyond just the Heights Association, but to the community at large. I wrote a letter to Moses saying I was surprised, considering his role in getting the promenade built, that he didn't take a firmer stand. And he actually sent me a 2-page letter, clearly no form letter, explaining in detail that I didn't understand the intricacies of zoning, and it was impossible to create a piece of spot zoning just to protect one particular view. Anyway, a few months later, they passed the 50-foot zone, the S zone, to keep anything higher from going across there. And then several years later, in 1974, the city adopted scenic view planes, so that if you sit on the promenade and looked, you could see halfway into the East River, and nothing could go up that would block your view halfway into the East River. The promenade is a 1/3 of a mile stretch along the edge of Brooklyn Heights. The walkway, for the most part, is about 23 feet wide. The individual gardens up to the promenade line are privately owned, but then there is the promenade line, which has a fencing along it, and the garden between that and the walkway is maintained by the Parks Department with great assistance from the Brooklyn Heights Association. Brooklyn Heights Esplanade cantilever structure is held up as perhaps the supreme example of what could be done to integrate highway with the community.